All right. All right. I think we're good. Um, I've been trying to do some kind of intro type thing for a minute. Um, okay, let's go here. Okay, so being dyspraxic here in the U.S., uh, there's a lot of crazy stuff that kind of separates dyspraxics in the U.S. from dyspraxics in the U.K. Although it's not notable. It's not mega notable, I should say. There are some major differences, though. One of the biggest ones is the whole idea that the U.S. is kind of built for transportation, and they're heavily built on things like roads and stuff. So when it comes to being an individual who's unable to drive, and that's not to say that dyspraxics can't drive. I know a few who do, but in the United States, you kind of have to drive to be a functional member of society. Otherwise, you have to use public transportation. And here in the U.S., the public transportation system is kind of garbage. Um, so that's a big thing. I hear that public transit in the UK is so much better. Um, I personally haven't been there. I'll have to go there sometime and figure it out and see what it's like. Because I hear it's like 10 times better than the US's. Um, the other thing is our healthcare system, which I will touch on more as I take this quiz. But the healthcare system is garbage here in the United States. We're a mockery of almost all Western countries. I hear the UK is starting to have a really crappy healthcare system as well. So, that's great. um, but not really. But I even in the UK, it's heavily understood that their system is still like 10 times better than the US healthcare system. So that's something I'll touch on. And I mean, being an American, there's almost a separate culture to being an American too, which, yeah, I'll get more into that. So, what I'm going to do here, I have the isidewith.com political quiz. And I usually take this every year around election season just to see how I rank and who I should vote for. Because the Democrats aren't as left leaning as most right wing think tanks make them out to be. If you look at like the general political compass, the the Democratic Party of the United States kind of leans like actually relatively right in the grand scheme of all politics. So yeah, this is always like a fun curiosity to see where I stand. Usually, when I've taken the political compass test, I've been smack dab in the middle, and I think dyspraxia to some degree plays a part in that because a lot of us have this ingrained inherent empathy. We tend to relate to almost all sides of every political spectrum. So we'll see. I mean, if I take this test and I end up seen as like an extreme socialist communist, I'll know that I'm still somewhat center in global politics. It's just when it comes to American politics, I lean far left. You know what I mean? Um, but part of why I'm doing this is also to help highlight the difference between being an American with dyspraxia as opposed to being a UK citizen with dyspraxia. Um, because I feel like we can have a nice dialogue from this. I've always been curious about my fellow dyspraxics because almost all of them are from the UK or Ireland, at least according to my analytics. So I'm really curious. on hearing their side of these issues as well, and you know how the differences are, because I only know from what I've heard, like the public transport thing. I know dyspraxia is a lot better understood in the UK. Um, Although from what I've heard from my subscribers and so on, the even in the UK, it's not as well understood as even things like autism and ADHD, and that's not helped by like crazy grifters like Andrew Wakefield, who have you know pushed the whole anti-vax narrative of vaccines causing autism that started in the UK and spread here to the US, where we just have to radicalize everything. So um, I do have my chat open, and if anybody hops in on this stream and feels like they want to weigh in, feel free. Um, but I really I wanted to take this quiz again, and I figured, especially with how disastrous a stream my last one was, where I was trying to stream Minecraft, and even Minecraft was lagging like all hell when I tried streaming. I figured I'd try something like this, where I just stream like a web browser with my camera here. And so far, according to Streamlabs, I haven't dropped a crap ton of frames, so that's good. So the other good thing about this quiz is, and I'll show you guys this website because it's really cool. Um, Not only will it show you like, because primarily what this site is used to do is to help you decide who you're going to vote for in the election. So it'll tell you what politicians you best side with, but it also shows. I'll show you. There's parties. It'll show you what party you side with the most too, as well as what quote unquote ideologies you side with. And I mean that's the other thing about this being, United States leaning is, I mean, there's a lot of people that lean socialism apparently. Um, but yeah, it'll tell me where, at least from an American perspective, I would side on the political end. And again, when I take this quiz, I'm taking it from the perspective of a dyspraxic in the U.S. So it'll show my view. So I guess we'll start with the economic issues. I guess is where the quiz starts with, and when it comes to economics, I suck at math. Okay, and I know that's not a dyspraxia thing necessarily, because my sister has dyspraxia, and she like excels at math. I just suck at math. So economics, I'm not gonna claim to be any um, expert on. So obviously, the first question: should the U.S. raise taxes on the rich? Um, and there's options here for more nuanced takes, which I prefer, because I do want to take a nuanced take. So there's yes and raise taxes on all income brackets, no but lower taxes for the poor, keep the current tax structure, reform to a flat tax, abolish the income tax. I mean, on one hand, I hate when taxes are taken out of my paycheck. That is the absolute worst. When you get your paycheck, you see all the taxes that were taken out. It's just, oh, it hurts. It hurts so bad. But at the same time, I understand that, like, I don't like how the U.S. uses their taxes. And I'm sure that's going to be a question later on. But I do see them as a necessary evil. Because all countries, they pay taxes. Um, so, is there, I mean, there is lower the income tax rate, remove all existing tax loopholes for large corporations, which just seems like anarchy to me. Um, I mean, I would. I don't know the current tax rates right now. Um, I do think we should tax the rich a little more. Um, just because I feel like it should be based on income. People who like are poor, shouldn't have to pay as much taxes as those who are rich. And I don't know. Oh, and there's a way to. Yeah, I'll say this is somewhat important. I don't want to say that I have any bearing on this. Should the government raise the federal minimum wage? I would definitely say yes. Um, there should be. Oh, yes, and make it a living wage. I feel like that's the biggest thing when it comes. I don't feel like anybody if they're working 40 hours a week, and this is like the Bernie Sanders quote that everyone has, I don't think anybody working 40 hours a week should be unable to afford to live. So it should definitely be a living wage no matter what. There's also yes and adjusted every year according to inflation, which I feel like is pretty much the same thing, isn't it? But well, I guess then it would be keeping the same tax rate. I living wage is definitely my stance, and I definitely am pretty hard line on that. Should employers be required to pay men and women the same salary for the same job? I feel like that's just a given. I don't know why that that's even a question, honestly. Um, like that's a given, and I don't know when it comes to feminism. I am not super woke. So I don't know anything about the wage gap, but I mean, that just seems like common sense. Like, why not pay the same salary for the same job? Um, should the U.S. raise or lower tax rate for corporations? Um, I mean, I honestly don't know. I should not have answered. I should not have opted myself to take more economic questions because I honestly don't know. Um, I definitely don't want to remove taxes on corporations. Um, Yeah, I guess I would increase for like large multinational corporations, but lower for small businesses because it's really hard to start a small business as it is. You throw on like a corporate tax rate. Oh, this is why. Do you support a universal basic income? I definitely should. I feel like everyone should receive an income to cover basic necessities. Call me a socialist, call me a communist, but I don't feel like anybody should have to be unable to live. And I don't know if that's an extreme take. I guess here in the US it might be. But I feel like everyone has a right to just exist, you know, and have basic necessities. Like, I know some people just can't work. And like take my case right now. I lost my job the day after Christmas, and I'm still looking for work right now. I have been on Indeed every day applying for every job I literally qualify for, and I have an interview tomorrow. But it's still been like a couple of weeks now. I still haven't found work, and if it weren't for the luck of the situation I was in now, I would be living on the street right now. Like, it's definitely not good. And I mean, especially with our disability system, that's something. Should welfare recipients be tested for drugs? That's a straight no. I don't feel like anybody should be tested for drugs, though. And honestly, I don't even think that's a socialist talking point. I think that's a general libertarian one, honestly. So I think I'm going to shy away from more economic questions. Housing issues. Should homeless individuals that have refused available shelter or housing be allowed to sleep or encamp on public property? Now, here's the thing. If they follow through with the universal basic income, that shouldn't be an issue. Um, I will say yes, just because. I mean no. I mean no. Okay, I should read that more properly. Just because I mean it's public property. And if you have the option for shelter, you should take it. And again, like given a proper universal basic income, this wouldn't even be a question. So, yeah. Domestic policy issues. Should there be more restrictions on the current process of purchasing a gun? Now, um, I think there are a decent amount of restrictions as it is. Um, I do think, but they should close the gun show loophole because that's where a lot of them are. Um, Strict background checks, psychological testing, and training are probably the big ones. And this is something a lot of people have asked me about, was to talk about my military experience. And I'll just say this as a dyspraxic, I understand the appeal of having guns. And that's not just because I'm an American. I there is no feeling, and this is going to sound a little twisted, but when you first fire a weapon, there is just this incredible feeling of power you get from it. Um, so yeah, there definitely isn't a. I can understand the desire to have a gun. Okay, I get that. Um, the problem is, yeah, here in the U.S. and I mean, I look at it from an international scope. Here in the U.S., gun violence is so overrepresented. We definitely need to have some more gun control policy. I don't think we should ban all guns. Like, but we should at least have background checks, psychological testing, and training. I think that's a given. Um, because, I mean, take me, I'm a dyspraxic. This is why I brought up my military experience. I couldn't fire, like, I had this strange thing where, I don't know if you people are aware, like, any other dyspraxics are aware of grouping and zeroing, which is like how consistent your shots are. So, say you fire a handful of shots, you know, if they're in the same area, and like with it, that's grouping and zeroing. And my consistency was good. Like, my shots would be lined right on top of each other. But actually hitting the target, I could not hit the target for the life of me. I sucked at actually hitting the targets. So yeah, um, I definitely don't think I should be qualified to, have a gun because even if, I were to do to defend my home or whatever, I'd be more likely to injure myself than injure the home invader. So yeah, that's the biggest thing. Should teachers be allowed to carry guns in school? I feel like this is an interesting debate. This kind of is one of the biggest gun control things, and this is how you can tell it's an American quiz. Is I mean all of these questions about gun control. This is like a uniquely American question. I don't think like any other country has posited the idea of equipping teachers with guns. Um, yeah, no, this would definitely increase the risk of accidental shootings. I know plenty of teachers I had growing up that I could not trust with guns. This is just general domestic policy questions, and almost all of them are about guns, which is okay. Should victims of gun violence be allowed to sue firearm dealers and manufacturers? Um, I don't know. This is more of a legal question um, that I'm not versed on. Um, I feel like, yeah, they should only sue the dealers, not the manufacturers. I don't think it's the manufacturer's fault that somebody got shot. It's the person they bought it from more than likely. Um, or yeah, that's actually a really good one. Um, any business should be held liable if the primary use of the product is for illegal activity. I feel like because if you're knowingly selling to somebody who clearly isn't qualified, like with the amount of background checks and everything that comes along with it, yeah, that should definitely be, and it would help also like open up a narrative for more nuanced gun control. So, okay, here we go. Should the Supreme Court be reformed to include more seats and term limits on judges? Finally, a question's not about guns. um, oh, and that this next one is definitely one you guys know. I'm completely going to go on about. So, the Supreme Court, I feel like needs complete reformation. Um, because I mean, limits for sure. I feel like there should be term limits on all political office, honestly. Um, so yes, I don't know about adding more seats, because then you're basically just making a legal Congress. I mean, is that a good thing? I don't know. I mean, I feel like we should completely reform the Supreme Court as a whole, but I mean, definitely the term limits on judges are the only thing I can really make a stance on. Um, so yeah, we'll go with that. Okay, so this is one I'm very hardline on. Are you in favor of decriminalizing drug use? And there should be. Okay, well, yes, and retroactively reduce sentences for those already. I feel like you should just legalize all drugs and regulate them properly. Um, Not just decriminalizing, but just straight legalizing. Um, because when it comes to drugs, I mean, part of the reason we have as many issues with drugs as we do is because they're illegal. When you make drugs illegal, you're opening up a black market. And I mean, this is a big thing that was notable with prohibition back in the 20s was when they made alcohol illegal. It helped like fuel organized crime even more. So by legalizing and regulating all drugs, not only does it open up like the ability for drugs to be bought legally and remove the amount of organized crime handling drugs, but also if they're regulated properly, you can limit the amount of harm because you're not going to have any adulterants or any like um was it adulterants or impurities or anything. Like for instance, when you buy alcohol or tobacco here in the United States, because it's regulated, when you buy a pack of cigarettes, yeah, you're going to be taking a risk either way. And you know the risk when you buy a pack of cigarettes or you buy alcohol. It's a given you know the risk. But your risk is still minimized and your harm is still minimized because you know at least what you're getting. And you can take as many safety precautions when it comes to consuming that substance because you know there's not going to be um, that added risk of adulterants or, you know, impure product or buying something that isn't what is advertised. Should it be illegal to burn the American flag? I don't think so. Oh, here, that's definitely a most. But I honestly don't. I don't care. Um, I really don't. Affirmative action. Yeah, see, here's the thing about these. There should be something where it's just like, I don't really know. Um, Affirmative action is good in theory. Um, I I don't know. I honestly don't know. We should definitely create more social programs. I think I'll just stick with that. That's definitely not a yes or no answer. And I feel like that's one of the biggest things is with all political issues, there's so much nuance to it. Like you'll notice I'm not hitting just yes or no for any of these because there's so much nuance to every political issue that no political issue is truly a yes or no thing. Should people on the no-fly list be banned from purchasing guns and ammunition? I would say yes. I think that's a given. Um, Although, yeah, the no-fly list should definitely be screened for accuracy. Because as somebody who is of Far Eastern descent, I know I would easily be put on the no-fly list, just because of my race, and that's just a product of 9/11. Here's another one. Do you support the Patriot Act? That isn't just a straight no. Edward Snowden is a hero. Um, I believe in internet privacy. I believe in privacy just in general. I feel like everybody has a right to privacy, and the Patriot Act kind of works against that. Um, the redrawing of congressional districts. What is that called? There's a word for that. Gerrymandering. Yes, it should be controlled by a commission. Um, it definitely gives an unfair. Yeah, no, we definitely should outlaw gerrymandering as a whole. Should the government regulate social media sites as a way to prevent fake news? See, this is a big one. This is a big modern one. Oh, yes. The second one is definitely a solid yes. I heavily side with Edward Snowden. But should the government regulate social media sites? This is a big thing, especially lately with fake news. And there definitely should be some kind of regulation of fake news. But it's a very fine line to walk because, there still is, some bearing on free speech. And even when it comes to, like, if it's intentional misinformation or fake news, that's definitely a big thing that should be, like, regulated. But there's also just science as a whole, where science is constantly evolving. And something that we may have thought was like true now can change later on as science constantly uncovers things. And that's the thing is science isn't a static thing. The whole idea of science is that it's constantly changing. So it's hard to say because if say I were to make release a political report or something, you know, and then it changes over time, is that considered misinformation? Um, but I don't think I can trust the government to determine what's fake or real news either, especially because of how right leaning the government is. So, yeah, I guess I'll stick with that answer. Um, I don't know, should I ask more domestic policy questions? Because these are the ones that seem like the more divisive. Should the government be allowed to seize private property? Absolutely not. Let's see. Should the Supreme Court justices be prohibited from making financial transactions with people who have? Yes, yes. I feel like that's. I mean, even Congress as a whole. Um, and what is this next one? Should members of Congress be allowed to trade stocks? Absolutely not. I feel like if you hold public office, you should be representing the public, not uh, company interests or financial interests, because that's why we're in kind of the state we are now, where you really don't know. Like, a lot of people in Congress, in the Senate, and Supreme Court are heavily biased towards um, financial interests and oil barons and stuff. They're the big ones where you really you have a lot of the meddling in, and now it's at a point where Congress doesn't represent the people as much as they represent their sponsors. So there definitely should be some bearing on that. Um, yeah, I guess I'll move on with education issues. Um, yeah, because I am going on with these domestic policy issues. So let's go with education issues. Oh, shoot. I just skipped a whole bunch of them. Okay. Do you support increasing taxes for the rich in order to reduce interest rates for student loans? Um, like I said earlier, I do support taxing the rich, although I would increase government funding for every student receiving a free college education. I feel like college education should be free, just like housing and everything. Um, and yeah, so that I guess this second one answers it. should the federal government pay for tuition at four-year colleges and universities? I definitely think they should. Uh, should critical race theory be taught in K to 12 education? Uh, no, I don't think it is. Like, I feel like that's the big boogeyman. Is like I will not claim to be as knowledgeable about this as many other more politically leaning public figures. But from everything I've read, critical race theory isn't being taught in K to 12 education. So I don't even know how that's even a question. This question is no longer irrelevant and should be removed, I think, is the real answer to that, not no or yes. Um, let's see, should the federal government fund universal preschool? I think yes. I feel like universal preschool is a given. Um, yeah, okay. Do you support charter schools? I'm not opposed to private schooling. Um, yeah, not at the expense of funding public schools, for sure. But I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem with private schools. Um, I mean, I feel like education in general should be public, but I mean, I feel like everyone has the right to the option of private school. You know, I mean, I don't really care one way or another. Should the government decriminalize school truancy? I mean, I feel like everyone should go to school, but I mean, I, that's a question I don't really. I didn't even know it was criminalized. I didn't know you could be jailed for not going to school. Um, I mean, as it stands, I mean, there are reasons for people not to go to school. Like, you know, inner city children who have to work to support their families. So, no, I don't think it should be decriminalized. Or, yeah, I mean, yeah, I can see why it should be decriminalized. I don't know why it was criminalized in the first place. Um, I don't think the government should offer students a voucher to attend private schools. I feel like they should have the option to, but vouchers, I don't know. Do I support Common Core standards? I don't know anything about Common Core. Um, education is not a focus that I am as versed on, honestly. So, oh, so is Common Core? You know, I think I'm actually gonna look this up because here I know Wikipedia is not the best, but it'll give me a good overview. Um, from 2010, they should know English, language arts, and mathematics at the conclusion of each school grade. I mean, I think it's a noble goal. Consistent educational standards across states. Um, it's supposed to prepare for college. I don't see an issue with Common Core. I guess I could support it. Um, I feel like the current implementation of schools, though, could definitely use some benefit. But yeah, I mean, could definitely use a little reform. But I don't know. Should colleges be held financially accountable if students default on their student loans? I don't think so. Um, I mean, something I answered previously about school being free would completely mitigate that. Um, yeah, no, and higher education should be free for everyone. There it is. Okay. Well, there's not a lot of education issues, which I can see why. I mean, I'm not really as well versed on education, so I'm glad there aren't any more. Like, I could keep answering more domestic policy questions, which I guess I feel like, you know, I think I will do a couple more, just because they are relevant to being a dyspraxic in the United States. Um, should social media companies ban political advertising? I would say no. I feel like when it comes to political advertising, social media is kind of a necessity. It's just like advertising on TV, except if anything, it's more open. like in theory, because of social media, if I were to draw more of a following than my 280 something subscribers, which I appreciate every single one of you guys too. You guys are awesome. But um if I wanted to theoretically, if I drew a big enough following on social media, I mean even if I didn't, I could campaign and run for president. I could run for president. Like social media has allowed people, like everyday people, to become social media celebrities. Like you could be a nobody like me, and if I probably had put more effort into my videos and following trends and stuff, I could be a celebrity if I wanted to. And that's not ego, that's just like social media has allowed for that. I get plenty of you guys that call me legend and everything, like in my live stream. And that really means a lot. So, like, yeah, the ability for anybody to run for public office is already like a noble thing, but having the access to advertise like that on social media and make something of yourself through social media is incredible. So, yeah, I'm all for social media companies allowing political advertisements. Should the military upgrade Air Force One? I don't really care. Yes or no? Um, Now, I served in 2015, and I feel like even though the government heavily funds the military, I don't feel like they do a good job of it. Because there are a lot of things that need to improve in the military that aren't being improved, despite the fact that the U.S. spends a metric shit ton on the military. I think it should improve military life as well. Should ISPs be allowed to speed up access to popular websites? Oh, this is net neutrality. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Um, I heavily support net neutrality. So let's move back down. Foreign policy. Should the government increase or decrease military spending? Um, I think decrease. And I only say this because we already spend so much on military spending that even decreasing it a little bit wouldn't hurt. I'm not saying we should remove military spending, but I think we should at least decrease it a little bit. Um, should foreign terrorism suspects be given constitutional rights? I think everybody has a right to a fair trial, and Guantanamo Bay is garbage. I completely, yeah. Yes, give them a fair trial and shut down Guantanamo Bay. And I mean, that's the thing of yeah, here. Just like U.S. citizens, terrorists should be given a fair trial in federal court. I think that's a given. If you're going to have a court on federal soil, it should follow the same constitutional rights that anybody would get given a trial in federal court. And that's just my opinion. I don't even know if that's a dyspraxia thing. Should the U.S. remain in the United Nations? I think so. I feel like the United Nations is an incredible thing. Um, I feel like we should have like the United Nations. Um, I feel like every country should be in the United Nations. Should we remain in NATO? I think yes. Um, NATO has done a lot of good, so I think that's a given. Especially looking at what's going on right now with the Russia-Ukraine thing. Um, Here, guys, give me a minute. My nose is running like crazy, and I don't want to start picking my nose on stream. It's a little embarrassing. Let me see if I can find some tissues here. All right. Sorry about that. My sinuses have been crazy lately. I don't know if it's the weather or what. Oh, man. Okay. Should every 18-year-old citizen be required to provide at least 1 year of military service? I don't feel like anyone should be required to serve in the military. I feel like that's something that should be a choice, honestly. Um, like, even though I was in for a very short period of time, I can say with certainty that while the military has helped me to some degree, like, I can walk straight now because of the military. I wouldn't recommend most dyspraxics join the military, and I guess that's a video I really need to do. I've had a couple of requests for it, but I'm just, yeah, I feel like military service shouldn't be compulsory. Um, should the military be allowed to use enhanced interrogation techniques such as waterboarding? Absolutely not. Waterboarding is really like messed up. And there's actually a really good video I suggest you guys should check out um, that Christopher Hitchens did, where he actually subjected himself to waterboarding to kind of prove the point. And yeah, that's a big thing. I'm not super well versed on foreign policy, honestly, but I mean, I can answer almost all these questions. Do you support the President Obama's move to lift the trade and travel embargo on Cuba? Um, I mean, I don't see why not. I don't know why we dislike Cuba to begin with. I mean, besides the fact that they're communist, but I mean, yeah, they were led by a dictator, but I don't think it's really our place, one way or another, to really interfere. And I mean, part of that also, I feel like we should be allowed. Yeah, there's a thing. I will add my own stance. I feel like we should be allowed to have Cuban cigars. Like, yeah, I quit smoking, but I really. There was a time where I was really into cigar smoking for a while. It was a very short period of time, but we should have the right to smoke Cuban cigars because I've heard they're very tasty. So leave Cuba alone. Let us get them cigars. Uh, should the U.S. provide military supplies and funding to Ukraine? I think that's a yes, um, because of NATO. Um, and these are very. The reason I'm answering these questions in a very straight way is because I have absolutely no bearing on public policy or on foreign policy. Um, I don't think the U.S. should necessarily be meddling in the affairs of other countries for the most part. But like the war in Ukraine, I mean, part of what's helped, I feel like part of what's helped the war in Ukraine is like all the support they've gotten from countries like the United States. So I do support that. As for Israel, I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Hopefully, I can leave that blank. I am I am not touching the Israel thing. Should the U.S. increase or decrease foreign aid spending? Um, yeah, I'm going to leave that one blank too. Should we fly drones over countries to gain intelligence and kill terrorists? I don't know. I've seen drone strikes affect more innocent people than, you know, guilty people, so I'll say no on that. Um, yeah, okay, I'm going to stay out of foreign policy because it's just something I personally don't feel like I can weigh on. Should the government require children to be vaccinated? Yes. Okay. Yes. This is. You guys know I hate medical misinformation, and especially something like vaccinations. It's part of the reason why COVID got as bad as it did. It's part of the reason why there was a second measles outbreak. You guys know I hate medical misinformation, and I'm all for freedom, like freedom of privacy, freedom of speech. It's an old American ideal, and I guess if you really choose, and that's definitely a most for me. if you choose to not get vaccinated, you know, at the expense of yourself, you definitely shouldn't subject it to your children. But even then, like, not getting vaccinated does affect other people, like people who are immunocompromised. So if you don't get vaccinated, that's not just you fucking yourself over, you're risking other people. So yeah, like even like with religious, yeah, they are essential to protecting other children. Um, there should be one to require vaccination for adults too, but I'll leave that as it is. I do support the use of nuclear energy. It's a lot safer than people make it out to be, and it's clean energy. Um, should producers be required to label genetically engineered foods? I'll say yes, but that's just because I feel like I'm not anti GMO either. I just feel like you should know what you're getting, just in general. Um, Not even necessarily because it's GMO or not. Should the government fund space travel? I feel like, yeah. I feel like space travel is something that benefits us all, and privatizing it just takes it out of the hand of the public. Um, I would increase NASA's current budget, yeah. Um, okay. Healthcare issues. This is okay. Should the government increase funding of healthcare for low income individuals? Um, Yeah, I guess. If they're not going to implement universal health care, then yes. Um, should the government require employees of large businesses to be vaccinated for COVID? Yes, I just talked about vaccines in that last issue. Um, do I support the Affordable Care Act? Um, I support the Affordable Care Act, but I feel like it needs to be fixed. Um, I feel like we should have universal health care, honestly, as a whole. Um, but I do like that it lowered the amount of limitations on the ability for people to get health care, which is nice. I mean, again, it's a noble goal, but it was poorly implemented. And that wasn't even Obama's fault. From what I read, like, Congress did a lot to prevent it from being a more friendly healthcare system. So, Obamacare could definitely be improved, but I'm not necessarily opposed to it. Um, do I support a single payer healthcare system? Um, no, I feel like we should have universal healthcare. Um, should people be required to work in order to receive Medicaid? No. It's hard to apply for a job if you're sick, for one thing. But for another thing, I don't think healthcare should be tied to somebody's job. Like I said, I just recently lost my job, and now I don't have health insurance, and it really fucking screws me over. Um, should cities open drug safe havens where people are addicted? Yes, absolutely. That's one of the biggest things. I heavily support safe injection sites. And yes, drug abuse should be treated as a health issue, not a criminal issue. I mean, there should be places where people can safely use drugs. If people are going to use drugs anyway, they should be able to use them in a place where they can safely do so. So if God forbid they do overdose, they don't die. you know, uh, drug abuse is a health issue. Drug use is. I've touched on this in a couple of videos. Drug abuse is usually the sign of an underlying issue as opposed to being the issue itself. So we should definitely have more funding towards the healthcare of those who have like a drug abuse issue. Should the government fund the World Health Organization? Yeah, I don't see why not. Just as much as any other country contributes. Um, Should the government regulate the prices of life-saving jobs? Absolutely. Or life-saving drugs? Yes. And we should socialize medicine and healthcare as a whole. Um, should the federal government be allowed to negotiate drug prices for Medicare? Um, I guess yeah. Yeah, if we're not going to, socialize healthcare. Um, should there be more or less privatization of veterans' healthcare? Definitely less. I feel like it should be free. They should be able to see any doctor of their choice. Um, yeah, okay. Should medical boards penalize doctors who give health advice that contradicts? Yes, absolutely yes, and they should lose their medical license. Medical misinformation is the biggest thing that kills people. Um, Here in the U.S., it's one of the biggest things. It's the biggest reason why healthcare shouldn't even be politicized. Honestly, it should just be a public, like, good. Honestly, public utility. Should health insurers be allowed to deny coverage to individuals with a pre-existing condition? No. Um, uh, it's immoral to deny health insurance to anybody, honestly. Um, let's get some more healthcare questions. Should the government increase funding for mental health research? For sure. You guys know I support that. I mean, that directly affects me. Um, it definitely needs more funding for quality of care. Um, should we support the legalization of marijuana? Um, yes, legalize, tax, and regulate. But again, I feel that for all drugs, not just marijuana. But yeah, that's definitely a big one. All right, let's go to criminal issues. Woo! We're making it. I think we're over halfway done. Should funding for local police departments be redirected to social and community-based programs? Yes, but I don't think we should abolish the police. Um, I feel like the police do have a purpose in very specific circumstances, but we should definitely have more, like, yeah, community-based responders for nonviolent calls. Um, but we should still have the police too. Should police departments be allowed to use military grade equipment? I would say yes, but only in response to extreme situations. And I feel like, isn't that SWAT's job anyway? Or is SWAT? I think SWAT is considered part of the police. Like, yeah, they're a police tactical unit. So yeah, for SWAT for sure, for sure. I definitely think SWAT has a purpose. Um, like taking down drug lords and sex traffickers and stuff for sure. Um, should convicted criminals have the right to vote? That's a big thing. Yeah, I think every citizen has the right to vote. If we let everybody vote, convicted criminals also should be allowed to. Um, do I support qualified immunity for police officers? No. No, I feel like if a police officer does something that is considered misconduct, they should be personally held responsible for that. Um, do I support limiting police unions? Uh, yeah, yeah, I guess. Like, if it, I mean, I feel like unionizing every aspect of the workforce is good, but when it comes to misconduct, yeah, I feel like all police should be held accountable for misconduct. Should prisons ban the use of solitary confinement for juveniles? Let me see if there's an option for everyone. Um, yeah, here. We should help prevent and rehabilitate criminals, not really punish them. But solitary confinement, especially, is really cruel. Um, do I support mandatory minimum prison sentences for people charged? I don't think anyone should be charged with drug possession. Honestly, um, I don't think drug abuse should be criminalized, as I touched on earlier. Should nonviolent prisoners be released from jail in order to reduce overcrowding? Um, it's hard to say because it depends what they were in for. I mean, what makes a nonviolent crime is something that's different from person to person. Somebody was littering, yeah, sure, but somebody who's in for like a sex crime, probably not. Very nuanced issue. I definitely can't weigh in on that because I don't really have anything there. Should police officers be required to wear body cams? I think so. Um, yeah. I mean, not only does that protect the citizens, it does protect the officers too. Um, no, we shouldn't privatize prisons. Um, prisons being privatized, yeah, no. Should drug traffickers receive a death penalty? No. Drugs shouldn't be illegal to begin with. Um, no. All right. Should the Electoral College be abolished? Yes, and I think we should have a popular vote system for sure. Um, should foreigners have the right to vote? This one is controversial, but no. I think all legal citizens should have the right to vote, but not foreigners at least. Should a photo ID be required to vote? I don't care, honestly. Um, I guess it's a nuanced issue because I guess some people they say photo IDs like I guess it's a state issue because a lot of people say like photo ID laws like go against racial biases and stuff. Um, but I mean, I was able to get a photo ID super easily, and I have dyspraxia. It's not hard to get a photo ID, at least where I live. But then again, that might be a state to state thing. Um, but we could automatically register every citizen to vote when they turn 18, which would just completely limit all the BS anyway. So I think I support that, but I don't really care. Um, should political candidates be required to release their recent tax returns to the public? Um, I guess. Uh, I don't care. Um, their tax returns, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Should the minimum voting age be lowered? Okay. I'd say yes, any citizen that pays taxes should be allowed to vote because anybody who pays taxes is clearly capable of working. And like I was working when I was like 14. So I don't know who I would have voted for if I was 14 though, when I was 14. I mean, what, did I have sound judgment? I don't think it really matters. Um, should there be a limit to the amount of money a candidate can receive from a donor? Definitely yes. I don't feel like there should be any corporate interests. Yeah, should not be bought by wealthy donors. Um, publicly funding elections would probably be the best thing for that. Should a politician who has been formally convicted of a crime be allowed to run for office? Um, that's a hard one, especially with the whole Donald Trump thing going on. Um, I think I'm going to leave that one blank. That's a hard one to answer with a yes or no at least. Should every voter automatically receive a mail in ballot? That would actually help out a lot, honestly. Um, yeah, I don't see why not. Should corporations, union, and nonprofit organizations be allowed to donate? I don't think. Um, yeah, no, these donations just kind of turn into bribes. Um, should there be a 5-year ban on White House and congressional officials from becoming lobbyists? I don't know. I don't think lobbyists should be allowed to raise money for any American election. foreign or otherwise. Should politicians over 75 years of age have required to pass a mental? Yes. I don't think anyone over 75 should be, yeah, ban anyone over the age of retirement because they clearly don't represent the majority of Americans. Immigration issues. This is the divisive one here. This is the one that might get me in trouble. Um, should illegal immigrants have access to government subsidized health care? Yeah, if they pay taxes. All right. Should the U.S. build a wall along the southern border? Yes, Mexico should pay for it. That that's basically a meme at this point. Is that even really still a? I'd say no. It would be costly and ineffective, even if you wanted to. I mean, I think we should have a relatively open border policy, so long as they do what they can to actually become a citizen. I don't really care. Um, but walls are ineffective. I mean, funding a wall just kind of assumes that planes don't exist. Should children of immigrants be granted citizenship? Yeah, I mean, if they were born here, I don't see why not. Um, should undocumented immigrants be offered in-state tuition rates? I mean, I feel like college should be free as a whole. Um, I don't feel like illegal immigrants should just be deported on sight. Um, see, I'm not opposed to illegal immigration, but I feel like if you come here, you should become a U.S. citizen at least if you're going to immigrate. That's all. And how that goes about tuition, and I mean that's why this is such a divisive issue, because I don't have an anti-immigration stance. I'm not opposed to immigration, but I feel like you should be a U.S. citizen in order to do things like vote and go to college. Um, so yeah, but like I don't know. Like I'm not opposed to people coming here and becoming U.S. citizens, and especially just straight deporting illegal immigrants before they have the chance. I don't like that. Like you know what I mean? Should sanctuary cities receive federal funding? What's a sanctuary city? That limits or denies its cooperation in enforcing immigrant law. Um, I don't think they should receive any more federal funding than any other city, but like, yeah, I don't know. I can't say one way or another. Because I'm not opposed to sanctuary cities. Um, yeah, I don't know. Immigration's a really touchy issue though, because like, if it weren't for immigration, I wouldn't be here. Not that I'm an immigrant. I am a legal U.S. citizen, but my biological father wasn't that I know of. I think he might be a citizen, but he did immigrate here. So I can't be like opposed to immigration. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for immigration. But like I don't know, it's an issue that I can't really say too much about. Like I still do believe that US citizens should have the right to vote. But immigrants, just because you're here doesn't mean you should automatically be able to like vote and do whatever you want. You should be a U.S. citizen. Um, it's kind of a hard stance to take because, again, I'm not anti-immigration either. I don't feel like they should be deported either. So should law enforcement be allowed to detain? Yeah, no, I don't think they should be able to detain immigrants. Um, and let's see, should working immigrants? I mean, if you're working, like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, should immigrants be deported if they commit a serious crime? Yeah, I mean, I think that's a given. um, Yeah, like, if you commit a serious crime in general, you should serve that crime. Uh, should the U.S. increase restrictions on its current border security policy? Um, I feel like we should. I guess that's an open border policy that I'm trying to say for. Make it easier for immigrants to. Yeah, at least if they're working. I mean, I don't see an issue with it. They can have a work visa at least. Should the U.S. increase or decrease the amount of temporary work visas given to. Uh, I, I'm satisfied with the current amount, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. Should immigrants be required to learn English? Okay, this is a nuanced take. I'm glad there's nobody in the chat right now, because this is an issue I have. I don't. I I worked at a gas station for years, and I'll say it's incredibly frustrating if somebody comes in and they don't speak a lick of English. Then I can't help you. I don't know how to help you. You know what I mean? That being said, like, as frustrating as it is, I mean, if they're learning, they should. Um, I feel like the government could provide free language learning courses. I don't think it should be necessarily mandatory though, because like say we're to go to Japan just to visit, like or even just to live there temporarily. I mean, I guess over time I would be expected to learn Japanese. Same if I were to go to somewhere like France or Germany, I'd be expected to learn French or German. But while I'd be expected of it, it's not like they would like make it a requirement. You know what I mean? So I don't think it should be like mandatory. But if they are going to make it mandatory, they should at least provide free language learning courses to at least make it doable. Because I can see why it would be a frustrating issue that would want to be made mandatory. But also, like, doesn't that technically go against, like, the First Amendment, too? Though? Because freedom of speech includes speaking whatever language you want to speak, too. If I want to go around and speak Klingon, I could. You know what I mean? And I'd be in my right to. And as a U.S. citizen, if I wanted to just speak Spanish, you know, because I'm a U.S. citizen, I have a right to do that if I wanted to. And you can't deport me or, like, I don't know. It's kind of hard. Hmm. Should immigrants be required to pass a citizenship test? Um, like, yeah, I feel like they should become U.S. citizens if they're going to live here. Um, it should test more than just basic level of understanding. I'm gonna do that one day. If this stream even later on gains some traction, I want to do it one day because I've seen it. The U.S. immigration test is like ridiculously hard, and even most U.S. citizens can't pass it. Like you have to study for that. I mean, covering basic and simple topics would probably be the best. Um, and even then, I mean, in my experience, a lot of that can be bypassed just by joining the military. Because when I was in basic, there were like 5 or 6 people there who were there just to become U.S. citizens. So, I mean, it's not like it should be easier, at least. Like, if somebody comes to this country and they want to become a U.S. citizen, they should be able to. Should it be mandatory? I don't know. Like, no, most citizens couldn't even pass a citizenship test, I think is how it should go. Um, I mean, I guess a test could happen. Um, should immigrants to the United States be allowed to hold dual citizenship status? Um, yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, I was contemplating becoming a dual citizen because I always wanted to live somewhere like Ireland. I thought Ireland was a pretty nice place. And I would like to go back and forth. So having dual citizenship would make that a lot easier. So I don't have a problem with dual citizenship. Should immigrants from high risk countries be banned from entering the country until the government improves its ability to screen out potential terrorists? See, that's a hard one too. Because, like, with empathy, I could imagine, like, leaving somewhere like Ukraine or even Syria or like a really unstable nation and wanting to come to the States. And like having a screening process kind of makes sense because of like 9/11 and everything. You know, like, but I don't know cuz like I don't think we should ban them. But I think there should still be a screening process. I'm assuming there is one. And knowing the US, I'm assuming it's archaic as hell probably, but I don't know. Should the government increase spending on public transportation? Yes. Our public transport, well, yeah, we should provide it for free, honestly. If you can't drive, you should be able to still be able to go from place to place. So free public transportation for sure. Here we go, social issues. Should the government continue to fund Planned Parenthood? Okay. So first off, I'm going to answer the second one. I am pro-choice. And this is an issue that is also very heavily divisive, even outside of the United States. So, this might net me some enemies. Planned Parenthood, on the other hand, their services do stretch beyond abortion, for one thing. They provide a lot of help. Now, that doesn't mean that Planned Parenthood isn't without its flaws. Because there's a lot of scummy shit that Planned Parenthood has done outside of the whole abortion thing. So, I support what Planned Parenthood does symbolically. Hell, I've even used Planned Parenthood um, because I've had an STD before, and if it weren't for them, I wouldn't have been able to get that screening because at the time I didn't have health insurance. So, um, Planned Parenthood is like a net good, and the government funding it, I have no problem with. Um, I don't have a problem with abortion, but I do feel like Planned Parenthood as a whole should be like audited for some of the other scummy shit they do. And also, I don't like how expensive it is to get stuff done at Planned Parenthood either. Like, I feel like, just like all health issues, it should be a part of universal healthcare. Like, I feel like it's something that if we were to implement a universal healthcare system, I feel like things like STD screening, cancer screening, all that stuff should be included. So you wouldn't even need a company in charge of that, like Planned Parenthood. Should health insurance providers be required to offer free birth control? Um, I, I mean, I feel like it should be covered like any other prescription, but again, I feel like universal health care should be a thing. Should gender identity be added to anti-discrimination laws? I don't see why not. I don't have a problem with gender identity. Um, I don't know why people are opposed to gender identity. Um, I really don't. Like, that's something I don't understand about the right in this country. Is like, what is the problem with trans people? Like, I don't understand what they have against trans people. Should gay couples have the same adoption rights as straight? Like, yeah, I mean, LGBTQIA plus, etc. I don't understand the issue with people on that spectrum. What's like? I'm gonna answer yes to all of these because like it just seems like a non-issue. All of this, like transgender athletes should be allowed to. Yeah, I mean, all athletes should have it. I don't know. I don't. That's the thing about identity politics. They call it is like it's a non-issue. Trans people exist. What's wrong with that? Like gay people exist, and they should be allowed the same rights as everyone else. Same with trans people. Like I don't think that's an extreme issue. Here in the United States, for some reason, it's seen as an extreme issue, but I don't see it as an issue. Like, and they should have the same right to healthcare as anyone else. Like, it doesn't even seem like a political issue to me. Should the federal government institute a mandatory buyback of assault weapons? Um, I think a voluntary buyback should be fine. I mean, a mandatory one would be a violation of the Second Amendment. We should definitely still have the right to bear arms, just with proper screening. Yeah, increased mental health and background checks instead. Um, should a business be able to deny service to a customer if the request conflicts with the owner's religious beliefs? This is a loaded question because this is the gay birthday cake thing. Um, I feel like any business should be able to deny service for any reason. Um, but yeah, they should post a sign stating their beliefs at least. That's fair. Because, I mean, a business is a business. You know what I mean? It's your private business. You can do what you want with it. And this is a hard issue. And the reason it's a hard issue is because, I mean, the whole gay birthday cake thing was really scummy. Like, it's really scummy for people to use their religion as an excuse to, like, demonize any minority. Not just gay people, but anybody. And this, I mean, this can create a really bad slippery slope where, like, you allow them. Yeah, I'm gonna say no for now, just because, like, first you allow if somebody says their religious beliefs prevent them from serving black people, you know what I mean, or from serving gay people, or it's just kind of, it's really scummy, and I don't like that. Um, I feel like they should have a right to though, just because you should have the right to deny service to anybody, especially when you've been working retail long enough. Customers are assholes. Like, some customers are just assholes, regardless of race, gender, creed, whatever. So, yeah, they should be able to deny service for any reason. But, like, I don't want to allow bigotry, though. Should federal government require racial sensitivity training for employees? I mean, yeah, also include LGBTQ plus topics. Or no, I think they should just have clear guidelines, because you shouldn't need racial sensitivity training to not be a dick. Is my thing, and that's the thing is like if you offend somebody, like, you should be subject to that. Like, you should be subject to discipline for that. That's just a given. And I feel like that's just, like, as a whole, like, that should just be generally understood, whether you're at work or not. And yeah, at work, you should get punished for it. There should be clear guidelines, and that should be included in your workplace. But I feel like it should be a given. Should universities provide trigger warnings and safe spaces for students? I don't have a problem with that. Um, should states be allowed to display the Confederate flag? Ooh. Okay. I'm all for the First Amendment and allowing that. So, yes. However, um, I will be the first to admit that flag is, and I touched on this in my last live stream, that flag is definitely a racist symbol, especially now. Whether it was intended as that in the past or not, because an argument can be made, especially with the whole lost cause myth and everything, that for the longest time people did honestly believe heritage, not hate. But especially recently, and with how a lot of like extreme right wing groups have co opted the flag too, it is definitely now essentially a hate symbol. So, yeah, it should be allowed in historical monuments for sure. Because I can see that as a proper use. But as long as it's not used as like a symbol for racism. Because a state shouldn't promote racism. Should businesses be required to have women on their board of directors? I don't think it should be a requirement. I feel like they should be most qualified. Um, do I support the death penalty? This is another divisive issue that may lose me some followers. But I do have to say that no, I don't. And there's, okay, so the first one here, the one that I'm selecting, I do feel like life in prison is definitely a harsher sentence. If you really do want to give somebody the worst possible sentence, making them live life in prison as opposed to the quick release of death is probably worse and more harsh. Um, this other one does make a good point. There are a lot of people that are innocently convicted, so subjecting them to death row doesn't give them a whole lot of chance to prove their innocence, especially because many people only get proven innocent after, they're given their prison sentence. Um, so yeah, I mean that's the thing. But I'm not opposed to the death penalty morally, though. I want to say, like, I get where it comes from, especially for really heinous crimes. But still, I would definitely think spending life in prison is definitely the harsher sentence there. Um, should people under the age of 18 be able to receive gender transition treatments? It depends on the gender transition treatment, like HRT and stuff. Like I don't see a problem with it, but like surgical treatments, yeah, I mean, wait till you're 18. Um, should the government support a separation of church and state by, yeah, I would say that. Cuz putting like God and stuff on money and buildings kind of glamorizes, like it shows a bias for religion. Um, not that I'm opposed to it. I mean, so be it, but like, yeah, I mean, especially with the rise in like Christian fascism as of lately, where they're trying to make America more Christian and everything. It also helps glamorize that. It helps kind of create this myth that America is a Christian nation, which it really isn't. The founding fathers were deists. Um, so yeah, should the military allow women to serve in combat roles? I don't see why not. I know many women who can like definitely outrank me. That's it. That's the one right there. Yes. As long as they can pass the same physical tests. That's all I care about. I don't care about their combat roles. Um, if a woman wants to serve in the same role, that's fine. I mean, my whole philosophy was like, if God forbid I were in combat and I were serving alongside a woman and say I got my leg blown off or something, I would want that woman to be able to just as easily carry me back to base as any man would. You know what I mean? I feel like it should, as long as they have the same qualifications, I don't care. Um, should hate speech be protected by the First Amendment? Um, yes, as long as it doesn't threaten violence. That's the thing. That is what the First Amendment is. Um, as long as you don't threaten physical violence. That's essentially what the First Amendment is. Should the U.S. withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement? Okay, let me see what the Paris Climate Agreement is. Okay. So it's basically a climate change thing? Oh, okay. Um, yeah, I mean, no, I don't see what's wrong with it. Um, should the government increase environmental regulations to prevent climate change? Yes. Should the U.S. expand offshore drilling? No. Like I am I'm not like a climate activist. Okay, I'm not Captain Planet, but like climate change is getting really freaking like bad. Like and almost all these issues are basically like the same thing. Do you think climate change is affecting things and should we take steps to prevent it? And the answer is yes. That's the answer to all these. I mean, that's essentially what all these questions are asking. So of course I don't support fracking because of that. Oh, okay, here we go. Finally, okay. Should researchers be allowed to use animals in testing? I think so. Um, I don't see a problem with animal testing. Um, if humans opted to it in place of animals, then for sure I'm down with that. But usually, when it comes to medical tests and stuff, you're required to do medical testing with animals first before you even open up to human trials. So it's kind of a necessity. Um, so yeah, as long as it doesn't affect the climate, I do feel like there should be some regulations. Like you shouldn't just be torturing animals because you can, but like animal testing, I don't have a problem with. Should drilling be allowed in? Yeah, no. Should the government give tax credit? Yes. Like all of these are, yeah. So I'm not even gonna bother with that because almost every question there is basically, do you support regulations to help with climate change? And my answer to that is yes. Um, should the president be able to authorize military force against Al Qaeda without congressional approval? I don't think. No, no. I feel like Congress should approve all military conflicts. Should the U.S. assassinate suspected terrorists in foreign countries? No, I don't think we should go into any country um, like that. I feel like that country should handle their own. military issues when it comes to terrorism. Should the president mobilize the U.S. military against Mexican drug cartels? No. Again, I think they should handle their own issues. Um, should President Biden be impeached on allegations of abuse of power? What did Biden do? You can tell this is the most American thing ever. Somebody from the right wrote this because I don't know what Biden did to deserve being impeached. What did Biden do? Oh, yeah, these are open ended. Okay, your opinion matters. Okay, no, okay. Which qualities are most important to you in a candidate then? Okay, we'll skip all those open ended ones. I think common sense is one of them, morality for sure. Um, Transparency is a big one. Honesty, obviously. And yeah, I think that's it. Let's show my results now. Let's see where I stand. I've I've possibly alienated myself from a good amount of my followers. So let's see what my reward is for that. What am I? Okay, no thanks. If I could share this quiz. No thanks. Come on. Okay. Okay. So as for parties, I lean most to the Working Families Party, which is apparently left-wing, collectivist, democratic, socialist, and pacifist, which makes sense. Same with the Green Party, which I did vote for the Green Party a couple of years back. Ideologies, let's see. I think this is a big one, especially for my UK followers, because what parties? Okay, so I definitely lean into democratic socialism, environmentalism, and economic progressivism. So I guess I'm a democratic socialist. That is the answer. I am apparently a communist, Marxist, feminist, democratic socialist. Um, yeah. So, good to know. That answers that. I guess as a dyspraxic American, I am a democratic socialist who should vote for Cornel West. Isn't he the taxes are too damn high guy? Or Marianne Williamson? Or Jill Stein? Okay, cool. So, Cenk Uygur. I didn't know he was running for president. Wow. Cenk, you're on YouTube. If you get a chance to see this, I would love to talk to you sometime. Because, wow, okay. Well, good to know. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have learned today that as a dyspraxic American, I am a democratic socialist. Not to generalize, I'm sure there are other dyspraxics who would oppose this. And if you do, feel free to let me know in the comments. I didn't have a single viewer in this live stream, which, like, I'm honestly not disheartened. I'm kind of glad was the case because I feel like I would have stepped on a lot of toes and gotten a lot of pushback from. But, yeah, anybody actually watching this after the fact, my fellow dyspraxics, hello to you all. Let me know what you guys feel about my politics and how dyspraxia may or may not relate to them. And if you guys agree or disagree with me. And that's all for this one, everyone. Thanks for watching this far.